So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I learned to sweep pick back in the day, and also how you can take it a bit further after you learn the initial arpeggio that I showed you here in the beginning of the video. So let's get going. So the very first sweep picking shape that I learned was this minor shape, 5-string minor sweep. So if we do this in B minor, if you know this B minor bar chord, which I hope you do, basically you're just going to add one note on the A string and an extra note on the high E string as well. So in this case we would have 14, 17, 16, 16, and then 15, and on the high E string we would have 14, 19. So, and the way that I picked this, and that I suggested you do as well, is to start with a downstroke, and then a hammer on, and then down, 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 up, pull off, up, 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 down. And that will give you a seamless loop. So if I start this arpeggio here, I will start with an upstroke most of the time. It kind of doesn't matter that much because you get a pull off, so you have time anyway, but it's easier to start with an upstroke because then you can basically do a rest stroke. So I'm resting on the B string here, below the B string, or closer to the floor. And then I pull off, and then we're sort of off to the races. And why I think it's better to learn one shape like this and then add the others later is that once you get the hang of the technique with one shape, you will find that it's much easier and less daunting to get into the other, in this case, a bit more complicated shapes. So, and I don't even think this is the easiest shape necessarily, but this video is about the way that I learned it. And this worked really well for me because it was tricky, but it was also achievable because it wasn't like a million shapes and a million things to think about. It was basically these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes that I could wrap my head around. And then basically I sit there and repeat that a ton of times very slowly and really focusing on accuracy. So if you're new to sweep picking and you felt that it looks kind of intimidating and, you know, people flying all over the fretboard, I think this is a great point to start, because even though you might feel like, well, isn't it better to start with 2 strings or 3 strings? And I don't think so, because when you do that, you have to turn around much quicker with the pick. When you do 5 strings, it's sort of that sweet spot between not being too many strings, and also it's not too few strings in the sense of that you needing to change direction very quickly. So I think 5 strings is a perfect place to start. And also this shape, I said it's not the easiest one, and why I say that is because you get this barring going on. But I also think that's a good thing, because then you get used to that idea before you get into other shapes that require more barring. And if you would start with another shape, let's say this one, so basically another inversion of the B minor, you have no barring. But I think if you start there, you're gonna have a harder time transitioning into shapes where you need to do barring. So, and I think this one is pretty good because it's only 2 notes, and whatever principles of barring that you learn from doing this shape will also work for bigger barred shapes. And I have a video on that whole barring thing that I'm going to link in the description below as well, so you can check out, and how you can get away from the most glaring issues in terms of notes ringing together and actually getting used to that technique. But that's another reason why I felt I kind of lucked out when I started with this shape, because it was perfect mix of challenging stuff but not too challenging, and also it sounded pretty damn cool, I thought. And basically what I did was that I just focused on a lot of slow repetitions. And I know that a lot of people don't want to hear that, because they just feel like, well, shouldn't you start slowly and then build up the speed? But I kind of never did that. I just started very slowly and did a ton of reps. We're talking thousands of reps here over, you know, several days and weeks before it started to feel really natural. And then I felt like the speed started to come more natural as well. And I don't want to give you the wrong idea here and think that this is the only thing I practice and then I can just play everything. That's not the case. But this was a really great start because I could get this very rewarding feeling of something is actually happening pretty quickly because I could focus on one shape. And also another factor is when you focus on one shape, it's much easier to be able to focus what the right hand is doing as well, because that's the big key here, right? We're talking about sweep picking, so it's a right hand thing. And the right hand should feel really comfortable. And what I've seen with a ton of students that I've taught this to, it's almost invariably they tend to do this. We go through the right hand, how to do that. And a quick reminder here, if you haven't tried it before, is to basically just put your pick here on the low E string, let it fall like that, and then you do the opposite. And as you can see, you get this natural pick slanting when you do that, when you try to put them together. And not, obviously, don't do that, that's a fast strum, but just try to get a very smooth and rhythmic feel here, and not worrying about the left hand. But what I then tended to see is that people get this quite quickly because it's not difficult, but as soon as they started adding something in the left hand, they would change the right hand picking technique, and going from this to like something like that. Not that bad, of course, but you see what I mean. So whatever change in their brain, going from this really smooth and comfortable feeling, and what I'm doing here, this is probably faster than you would ever need to sweep in a musical context. So anyone can do this. I mean, give someone that doesn't even play guitar, give them your guitar, give them your pick, and then just let them try doing this a few times, and then tell them to try to get it more even. And I think they could get a fairly decent thing going even without being able to play guitar. So the right hand technique is quite simple once you get into it, and you want to maintain that. So as you practice this shape, you want to make sure that the right hand keeps the same feeling, so the same technique. And your technique will look slightly different than mine because it depends on how you hold your pick, where you prefer to pick in terms of where on the guitar you like to pick, and all kinds of things like that. So don't even worry about what it looks like for you. If you can get this sound, this rhythmic control in the right hand, then you're good to go. And then you just need to focus on slowing that down, and when you do that, you're going to find that you actually get these rest strokes. That's so important when you practice sweep picking slowly, because basically you're going to be keeping the same technique down slow as fast, and that's how you really program your technique with control. So again, don't overthink this, just sit there and make sure that when you add the notes, the right hand is doing the rest strokes and you feel really comfortable. And then it's just a matter of doing enough reps. But again, don't worry about the speed initially. Instead, do your practice, get a ton of reps in, and then after you've done your reps, you can try getting a bit faster. But I would do it in this way, where you maybe just go one direction, and then trying to put that together. But keep that separate from your practice. Try to have an attitude of like, when you're practicing, you're really focusing on each note, and you want to try to remove any type of string noise or whatever. And this is also where it's so helpful to move it up and down the fretboard that I talk about a lot, because it relieves the boredom and it actually feels like you're going somewhere. Because if you're sitting here, it's gonna feel like you're not really doing anything, but if you move it up and down the fretboard, you get at least the illusion of something happening. But other than that, you also get a much better feel for the entire fretboard, because it feels different. Do the sweep here, then doing it up here. And when you practice this as well, I would suggest that you don't use this pickup, use the back pickup, or the bridge pickup, so you can really hear if the notes are clean or not. So once you start to feel comfortable with this, you want to expand this to the other 5-string shapes and also 3-string shapes as well, and go through everything systematically. But better off doing that once you feel a bit more comfortable with one of these shapes. You can actually, you know, show yourself that you're able to do this technique, and then it's going to feel way more achievable, and also you will feel more motivated to go through the other shapes, because then they're going to be more challenging, but as you can do one shape, you know, fairly well at that point, it won't feel too steep of a challenge. So learning is kind of like a circle. So in the middle of the circle, you basically have everything you're already comfortable with, but as you get closer to the edge of that circle, the harder it's going to be. And if you're outside the circle, it's going to be very tricky things, which would be for sweep picking. If you started working on something like something really long like that and complicated with shapes you haven't done before, you haven't done anything with the right hand, and you know it's just very tricky to do, that's going to be way more frustrating. That's the problem I feel with learning licks right away, because it can be very soul crushing when you can hardly even keep the shapes in your mind, and then you're like, oh, how am I ever gonna feel comfortable doing this? And that's where focusing on one shape with like this laser focus, and not really even caring when it's gonna, you know, feel like something that's gonna be usable for you. You just work on that shape. It's like your side hustle, not side hustle, but your hobby, basically. And then before you know it, and when I say before you know it, probably talking about weeks here anyway of daily practice, you're gonna feel quite comfortable with this shape, and that's gonna be way easier to transfer to other shapes. So once you feel comfortable with this shape, you can check out the video that I have linked in the description where it says 10-minute workout. And it's basically a free lesson from my 10-minute workout packs. So you don't need to sign up for anything, you just go straight there. And in that lesson, you have a 10-minute workout where I cover all three 5-string major and minor arpeggios, which you know one now, and also the 3-string variations. And that's all in a 10-minute workout. So check that out if you're interested in diving a bit deeper. Make sure to check this video out if you want to learn another way you can practice these arpeggios besides only playing them very slowly.